Star Wars, Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. So, the story of Rey, Finn, and Poe crashes to its hectic, contractually obligated conclusion in a finale which feels like it was written by an 8-year-old child with a box of toys. I didn't hate the film, and I recommend seeing it if you have any affection for the series at all, but it's as dumb as a box of hammers and not nearly as much fun as it should be. There will be mild spoilers, more so as this review goes on. It's the most disappointing Star Wars film since the prequels, although it also delivers, in its uninspired way, most of what you're looking for in a conclusion to this Star Wars saga. If anything, its crime is that it tries to do too much, packing 2 films' worth of incident into one and taking no time to develop its characters. Stuff simply happens, and a whole lot of it. It's moronic, but that's not a deal breaker for a Star Wars film. Very little of what happens here was set up in the previous films, and director J.J. Abrams wastes a lot of time undoing rather than building upon everything that Rian Johnson set up in the far superior Episode 8, The Last Jedi. That film now feels like a strange aberration in the series, as Abrams' film is more of a sequel to The Force Awakens. And if The Force Awakens was J.J. Abrams' attempt to remake Star Wars, this is his attempt to remake Return of the Jedi. Everyone seems to have turned into their own action figures since the last movie, rather than being fully developed characters. Wicket the Ewok, played by Warwick Davis, even has a cameo. But it's beautiful to look at, gives the main trio of Rey, Finn, and Poe a lot to do together, delivers a reasonable, if basic, storyline for Kylo Ren, and provides a thrilling happy ending to this Star Wars trilogy, which is almost, but not quite, the ending it deserved. 3 years passed in between the original Star Wars films, but Disney has been releasing a new Star Wars feature every year, with some films being reshot and the directors replaced. Colin Trevorrow was fired from Episode 9 after the failure of his film The Book of Henry. J.J. Abrams returned to direct, but that decision was somewhat last minute, and the film feels rushed in every possible way. Dana Schwartz on Twitter said, "Most of the movie felt like the video part of a Star Wars ride, where you're like, whoa, they got the real actors." It's a copy of other Star Wars films, bordering on self-parody. YouTuber Jenny Nicholson compared it to a fan fiction she'd reviewed by Star Wars novelist Alan Dean Foster, which had sought to undo everything from The Last Jedi, especially its female characters. This film also undoes all the intelligence and humor that film had, and the more interesting direction it seemed to be taking the series. The film is written by J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio, who co-wrote Batman v Superman and Justice League for Zack Snyder. Batman v Superman is, for me, the worst movie I've ever seen. Although it's hard to know how much any individual writer is to blame for that. Hollywood works in mysterious ways. J.J. Abrams himself is a slick and skilled filmmaker, but his films lack character and feel like pastiches of better films. They're competently made, but basically a copy of a copy. But this is not a deal-breaker for Star Wars either, since George Lucas was also a pastiche filmmaker, building upon older science fiction traditions, westerns, adventure films, and the samurai epics of Akira Kurosawa. But George Lucas is also a weirder and more original filmmaker than he's usually given credit for. The Star Wars prequels showed his shortcomings in terms of writing and pacing and directing actors, but were also full to bursting with new ideas. I missed that feeling in J.J. Abrams' The Force Awakens, which was content to merely rehash ideas from the original Star Wars in a bland and unchallenging package. I felt the same here. Abrams' work is slicker and less embarrassing than Lucas's prequels, but it also plays it safe, repeating familiar ideas and designs which were proven to work in previous films. I was undecided about The Force Awakens and its characters until I saw its impact on social media. Younger fans and women loved and connected with the new characters like Rey, Finn, and Poe. While the original Star Wars trilogy is a contender for the most successful and influential motion picture event of all time, it also has a problem with women characters. Princess Leia Organa is a great, vivid lead, but she's also the only important female character in the films. Only one other woman has any lines in the 3 original Star Wars films. Luke's Aunt Beru has a couple of lines in the first Star Wars, an unnamed tech on Hoth has a line in Empire, and rebel leader Mon Mothma has a few lines in Jedi. That's it. Kami and an old woman were cut from Star Wars, and a couple of female pilots were cut from Jedi. Ula has some non-English speech, as do some singers in the special edition. It's also a very white universe, with the exception of Lando Calrissian. It's no surprise, then, that many audiences, especially young women, had a hard time connecting with the films. Leia, being the only woman of any consequence, set an unfortunate precedent, which other franchises would repeat throughout the 1980s. While women, of course, make up 50% of the population, it was enough for most kids' franchises to have one woman in the entire main cast. And she might be dressed in pink at all times, and being a woman might be her only character trait. Some franchises have 2, but women are almost always outnumbered. In real life, Carrie Fisher was a whip-smart and funny writer, much more interesting than the character she played. The Leia effect seemed to break the brains of every generation that followed. Any attempt to add more women or add ethnic diversity or add LGBT characters is still met with a huge backlash. A cast made up entirely of straight white men is seen as natural and normal and patriotic, and anything else is seen as forced diversity and a sign of insidious forces trying to change our culture. For a lot of very loud people on the internet, there are 2 genders, male and political. For them, there are 2 races, white and political. There are 2 sexualities, heterosexual and political. This is, of course, white nationalism. It should be surprising that a series whose bad guys are British space Nazis has attracted white nationalist fans, but the hero's journey of Luke Skywalker has white guy exceptionalism baked into it, if only accidentally. Luke is an unspectacular white guy who is apparently the most special and important character in the universe because of his bloodline and who his father is, a famous space Nazi. Luke is a very normal and recognizable hero archetype, seemingly named after George Lucas himself. He's not a tough guy. Luke is a nerd who wins to an extent by embracing mindfulness, nonviolence, and compassion, and I can get on board with that. The only problem is that Star Wars was massively influential, and many heroes afterwards tried to be like Luke Skywalker, with elements of the cocky Han Solo or Indiana Jones thrown in. George Lucas was already consciously imitating films from the 40s and 50s, which were not great for diversity and representation. Star Wars' influence was an excuse for films in the 80s and 90s to be equally old-fashioned. Lucas had considered making Luke Skywalker female, an idea not explored until Rey in 2015. Rey is the Jedi hero of the sequel trilogy, played winningly with poise and restraint by Daisy Ridley. She is the main character, and that does make a difference. George Lucas's prequel films had more female supporting characters than the original trilogy did, but that's a low bar and easy to overlook since the films are bad. And because the character of the most importance fits the Leia trope. That is, of course, Padme Amidala, played blandly by Natalie Portman. And because of George Lucas's obsession with black and white films, the prequel films were also pretty bad with ethnic diversity, introducing lots of alien characters who sound like your racist uncle doing a funny voice. The Trade Federation aliens sound like Asian stereotypes, and the dopey Jar Jar Binks sounds and acts kind of like a 40s black servant stereotype. Actor Ahmed Best got a lot of hate for the role and deserves better. It mattered that Finn, the black ex-stormtrooper played by British actor John Boyega, is the hero with a lightsaber on the Force Awakens poster, even if the films never seem to have much idea what to do with him. They pair him off with a different romantic interest each film, and his storylines never really seem to finish what they start. He does have his own antagonist, like Gwendolyn Christie's underused Captain Phasma, who doesn't appear in Episode 9, and John gets a lot across as an actor without saying much, which is helpful in such frenetic scenes. For me, Oscar Isaac's hotshot pilot Poe Dameron didn't come across as much of a character in The Force Awakens, which is a standard problem for J.J. Abrams, but the next two films feature him very heavily. Before that, fans kind of filled in the blanks based on hints in the performance. Oscar Isaac and John Boyega were happy to suggest that Finn and Poe's friendship was really a romance. But The Last Jedi separates them, and Rise of Skywalker doesn't go there at all. It introduces new, underdeveloped female love interests for both Finn and Poe, whose storylines are kinda left hanging. So is Finn's apparent desire to tell Rey he loves her, or the hints that Finn might be Force-sensitive? It feels like the film is working overtime to avoid not just gay romance, but also interracial romance, which isn't a good look. YouTuber Jenny Nicholson said, "In the ending scene, Poe and Finn could have kissed on the mouth and it would have resolved their storylines." You can take that as a joke, but it wasn't one to many viewers. Oscar Isaac has taken to mentioning this in every interview, saying that he fought for Poe's bisexuality. It's not too out of line. The filmmakers of Solo considered Lando to be bisexual. In The Last Jedi, Poe Dameron's storyline was misunderstood by a huge portion of the audience. He's overconfident and wants to be the hero and ignores orders by his superior officer, Laura Dern's purple-haired Admiral Holdo. Holdo hasn't told Dameron everything about her plan, but she also outranks him, and he goes behind her back formulating his own plan. He is reckless and needs to learn a lesson, even as Leia and Holdo are secretly grooming him for a leadership role if he learns. He is like Luke in The Empire Strikes Back. He's impatient and making the wrong decisions. A lot of viewers didn't understand that this time round because they hated the purple-haired woman and paid no attention to what was really happening. If anything, Poe Dameron is overused in The Rise of Skywalker. Oscar Isaac gets to really shine and be charismatic since the film has decided he's taking the roles of both Han Solo and Leia. Keri Russell from J.J. Abrams' TV series Felicity plays Zori Bliss, who has a history with Poe. They fight in a way which is supposed to show sexual tension between them. Keri Russell is charming as hell and underused. She never takes off her helmet either. Like Gwendolyn Christie in the other films, they had a popular star actress where the most you see of her is her heavily made-up eyes. Her outfit is a little underdesigned, but will make a decent toy, and her story is not resolved enough to be satisfying. There's also Naomi Ackles' Jannah, who doesn't get quite enough screen time to be all that interesting. She connects with Finn because they have the same backstory, and the ending tries to, sorry for spoilers, pair her off with Billy D. Williams' Lando Calrissian. According to comments elsewhere in the books, this is setting up a non-existent spin-off where they'll find out he's her father and that he already expects this. He's been looking for his child. But this is really rushed and trying to do way too much in about 3 lines of dialogue, which is not unusual for this film. J.J. Abrams himself voices a new droid, D.O., who has zero charisma compared to even R2-D2 and BB-8 and will not be anywhere near as popular. Sorry. Lupita Nyong'o is still voicing Maz Kanata. Shirley Henderson, Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter, voices Babu Frick, who is probably the film's breakout character. Babu is a weird little creature who mostly says its own name, acts like a tattoo artist, and kills C-3PO. And no, that's not a spoiler. Domhnall Gleeson's General Hux has been a rival and uneasy partner to Adam Driver's Kylo Ren. With Ren set up as supreme leader of the First Order, there's a whole film worth of conflict between them, with Kylo Ren being a true villainous leader but unsure of himself, and Hux looking to undercut and surpass him. This is not that film. The film barely uses Hux at all, skipping over him and largely replacing him with an older actor, Richard E. Grant, as General Pryde, who is admittedly good. We also don't see much of Kylo Ren in full villain mode, even temporarily, as the film has a different big bad villain. What's criminal here is how the film underuses and abandons characters and themes set up in the previous films. Rose Tico, Kelly Marie Tran, a main character in the last film and love interest for Finn, here has less lines than Yoda, who is not in this film. A Rose Tico-like role in the story is taken by the new character, Janna, who we barely know. Janna connects with Finn, is tech-savvy, and rides horses. It looks like Rose's part was replaced. When Rose Tico is in the scene, her lines are instead spoken by Mary Brandybuck, a Hobbit character from the Lord of the Rings series whose presence here is unexplained. That's Dominic Monaghan, who of course appeared on J.J. Abrams' Lost. J.J. gave roles to his friends, basically. Kelly Marie Tran was chased off of social media by alt-right trolls who apparently hate that an Asian woman was appearing in Star Wars, and this film treats them as if they were right to do so, showing her character only in cameos as if she's an embarrassment. That's also how the prequels treated Jar Jar Binks after his badly received first appearance. But Rose Tico was a key character who drove Finn's storyline in The Last Jedi. Her storyline, which was widely misunderstood, included a journey to the casino planet of Canto Bight, showing a different side of the Star Wars universe and commenting on its income inequality. We got a sense of recognizable real-world politics, meeting rich war profiteers and realizing that X-Wings and TIE fighters are made by the same companies, who don't particularly care about the difference and profit from the war. We met Benicio del Toro's DJ, a cynic who refused to take a side except to only care about himself, and Rose's idealism shone brighter by comparison. The right-wing haters despise this section of the film, but they've never admitted it's because they hate its politics. They'll simply say it's boring, useless, and out of place. The film ended with Rose saving Finn from sacrificing himself and saying the Resistance could win by saving what we love. She loved Finn, and that's forgotten entirely here. Rose was basically an ascended extra. She wasn't a Skywalker or a Solo or a Kenobi. She was a background character becoming a star just by caring about things, about Finn and about the Resistance. She reflected the recurring theme of The Last Jedi, that the Force is awakening in the universe and is present in everyone, that anyone could be important. The Last Jedi ends with a little boy with a broom shown to have Force powers. It confirmed also that Rey isn't a Skywalker or from any famous family. She was nobody, but she's powerful. It's a statement similar to the ending of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which said that anyone can wear the mask and be a hero, and was setting up something similar to how Buffy the Vampire Slayer ended, with thousands of Slayers being awakened. It was a statement against the white supremacy that had been accidentally inherent to the Skywalker narrative. The Last Jedi was a surprisingly thoughtful film which deepened all its characters and hinted at a much more interesting and philosophical route the series could have taken. The Rise of Skywalker undoes almost everything that The Last Jedi did. A lot of viewers didn't understand The Last Jedi's themes, and I don't think J.J. Abrams understood them either. Certainly this is a film for people who didn't understand The Last Jedi, and it's baffling to watch for that reason. It has none of the brains and none of the humor. It treats Admiral Hodo's entire plotline as a plot hole, just like all the haters said on Reddit. Mary Brandybuck mentions her heroic suicidal sacrifice as the Holdo maneuver, which is a fan term and is dismissed for saying it. Someone said this film couldn't be more disrespectful to Rian Johnson if it had been motion smoothed. I'd heard that 90% of the film was just characters running into a scene, shouting some piece of expository dialogue explaining what's happening, and running out. That's an overstatement, but not by much. There's a scene like that where Finn and Poe run in to rescue their furry friend, and I couldn't help but notice that the expository dialogue was unnecessary and would have been replaced by jokes in any other Star Wars film. J.J. Abrams came from a Hollywood family, and I think he's happy to believe the notion that some people are born for greatness and others aren't. There's not much here that's funny either, apart from a general feeling of the three leads having some chemistry in their banter and talking over one another. There's also not much that's as deep in terms of character acting. The tension between Rey and Kylo Ren is still great to watch, as the actors play it intensely for all they're worth, but they do seem like action figure shadows of their former selves, especially because they're much more powerful now. As in fanfiction versions of the film, like Alan Dean Foster's, the film is too obsessed with older characters and with the past. It gives no time for the characters this trilogy has set up, like Hux, Rose, Maz, Connix, and Wexley, and does very little with new characters like Janna and Zori. At least Rey, Finn, and Poe get plenty to do. Billy D. Williams' Lando Calrissian finally returns, though the film has no idea what to do with him other than have him repeat his basic role from Return of the Jedi. Dennis Lawson's Wedge Antilles also returns for, I think, only one shot, as does Nien Nunb. John Williams has a cameo and turns in his usual great work on the music for presumably the last time. There are also no less than 15 voice-only cameos from the previous Star Wars films and cartoon series, and I would love to know the backstory behind this and who actually came back to record new material and why. Other characters return too in increasingly far-fetched ways. Carrie Fisher's Leia was underused in the previous films, but was supposed to have a larger role here before she tragically passed away. Leia gets a lot of screen time here regardless, with unused footage from The Force Awakens repurposed in many awkward scenes. It's as if Carrie Fisher suddenly forgot how to act and everyone else is acting around her and finishing her storylines for her in an awkward fashion. That sums up the basic feeling that this film is sort of a zombie of itself, repeating ideas from previous Star Wars films. Even the CGI version of Leia from Rogue One seems to return. The film is overloaded by the history of the previous Star Wars films. It's haunted by ghosts in a very literal way. It also plays out like fan fiction, with batshit crazy twists at every turn, masking how boring the film is otherwise. Anyone with Force powers is wildly overpowered in this film, in particular Rey and Kylo Ren and the villain. The film comes up with new, previously unseen Force powers about once every 10 minutes, and they're basically superheroes. Only in a fan fiction would you read something as crazy as, Rey is the Emperor, Empress Palpatine, and during a mind battle with Kylo Ren, she blows up Chewbacca with hand lightning. Or does she? Or C-3PO becomes an evil Sith Lord for exactly 1 minute. Both of which describe scenes in this film. I'm sorry if those are spoilers, but you've gone this far. I could describe a lot of scenes in this film and sound like I was kidding. As I said, it feels very much like the film was written by an 8-year-old playing with action figures. In truth, I think the writers were trying to please as many people as possible and make it feel as much like Star Wars as possible, and in the process created kind of a hot mess because they had no larger philosophical or character ideas. People complained in the previous films that Rey was overpowered simply because she's a woman, but in this film she genuinely is far more powerful than we've seen a Jedi be before. Kylo Ren destroyed his helmet in the past film as a sign of his changing character, but he rebuilds it in time for this film and for the action figures. The unexplained villain Snoke is explained here, and it's disappointing. There's a scene which seems to make fun of or criticize the first scene of The Last Jedi, where Luke throws his lightsaber away. Although, hey, the lesson of that film was that Luke was wrong to do so. We find out that Rey is not a nobody, and she fights a familiar villain. Since it's been in marketing and we're this late into the video, I guess it's not a spoiler to say that Emperor Palpatine is back, once again played delightfully by Ian McDiarmid, and this might have worked for me better if he was sort of a ghost or a memory, or there was no setup for this in the previous films, no hint that he was still around in any form, and that was important to set up. Ian McDiarmid first appeared in Return of the Jedi, but the Emperor character had appeared in The Empire Strikes Back and been hinted at in Star Wars. Here there's no setup. In fact, the opening crawl of the film seems to skip over what could have been and should have been 20 minutes of actual movie scenes. Do you remember the bizarre opening crawl from Revenge of the Sith? War! The Republic is crumbling under attacks from the ruthless Sith Lord Count Dooku. There are heroes on both sides. This crawl is similarly baffling. The dead speak. The galaxy has heard a mysterious broadcast, a threat of revenge in the sinister voice of the late Emperor Palpatine. This references an event which happened exclusively as part of the video game Fortnite. I'm still not kidding. Once you get used to his presence in this film, Emperor Palpatine is a hoot, as usual. Ian McDiarmid has been a highlight in every Star Wars film he's appeared in. It's just strange that this film spends so much time retreading old ideas with old characters saying old lines. The film would be improved if Palpatine was lying about Rey's parentage, and she was nobody. Unforgivably, though, this film erases the character of Rose Tico. It all but argues that alt-right trolls were right to harass Kelly Marie Tran off of social media. Rose's likeness appeared on prototypes of various merchandise from this film, but she was erased from the final merchandise sold in stores. Poe and Finn are rude to each other for no reason, and both get new love interests in stories which don't resolve. Fans who saw a romance between Finn and Poe get a whole film denying that, which isn't surprising. But since we recently got a very gay and very good reboot of She-Ra, the fans weren't wrong to expect more. There is a gay kiss here of two minor female characters, blink and you'll miss it, just like how technically there is a female pilot in Return of the Jedi, but you're not supposed to know that. Fans who saw a romance between the conflicted hero Rey and the conflicted villain Kylo Ren were harassed online for believing that for years, even though the films have never been subtle about that romantic subtext. If you're watching these films specifically for that romance, you've been rewarded for most of the running time of all three films. But Rey is probably a Skywalker, people shouted. They're probably siblings, and he's evil, and you're sick. Well, sorry for spoilers, but that romantic subtext is still very present here. Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver are still terrific at playing that subtext, and most of what's good about this film hinges around that. And after The Last Jedi, which established that Rey was not from any famous family and was Nobody. It would be deeply stupid for this film to end with her saying she's Rey Skywalker, as ghosts of Luke and Leia smile at her. Then again, this is a deeply stupid film. I do feel like the Rey and Kylo Ren storyline is one part of this film that really delivers on what fans of this trilogy wanted, but there's already a wide range of reactions to all that, so your mileage may vary. Merchandise showed Adam Driver's character in a different outfit that never appeared on screen, possibly something they shot for the ending and didn't use. It's very possible that some more interesting ideas were whittled away by Disney executives and by the need to sell toys and video games and make billions of dollars. It's also possible that J.J. Abrams didn't have any particularly strange or challenging ideas to begin with and was happy to just make a movie that feels like Star Wars, which is also what he did with The Force Awakens. And there's something to be said for that. Certainly. Audiences want a movie which feels like Star Wars and isn't too weird or off-putting like the prequels were. The original design sensibilities of the first trilogy are timeless and still work today, so why fix what's not broken? But fans don't always know what they want. Really, this film could have used more original ideas and a more original filmmaker. Sorry. And it's a crime that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson didn't just co-write the script here. The film tries to do too much, blowing 2 films' worth of plot in one. It wastes time undoing what the previous film accomplished and providing more extended cameos for the original trilogy cast. It's flat, humorless, and mostly, but not entirely, joyless to watch. It follows very standard screenplay structure, which is standard because it works, and the film wouldn't work without it, but you can see the gears turning. It's very save the cat. It doesn't do much with character arcs beyond the obvious. But it's not bad. I saw the film in a packed theater. 1 or 2 people were clapping throughout, at everything. Everyone else was quiet. It's better than the prequels in most respects and entertaining enough that no one should be too embarrassed about it, but it's not as good as it should have been. So, now Rian Johnson gets to do an Episode X which undoes everything J.J. Abrams just did, right? That's how this works now, right? Right?